Good. Hey, by the way, is this live or is this? I mean, is this? Are we doing this?
We are recording this, right? So we can keep
Also,
whatever we want.
Let this also be there in that.
Yeah.
And we are frozen on the name, right?
I wanted to add baby to it. Like bam splat boom baby.
There's a song by Stone Temple Pilots, Big Bang Baby.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We can make that the theme song.
Hey there, welcome to Bam Splat Boom, a podcast hosted by Abhijeet and Krishna Rao. We'll be talking about all things comics and pop culture. Let's dive into episode 2.
Okay, so this podcast is proof that badgering works and that Abhijeet Kini is a very nice guy because I did not have to badger him at all to make this podcast. So thank you, Abhijeet, for agreeing to do this.
No, man. I didn't need any badgering at all because I was sold on the idea the moment you mentioned comics and pop culture and a podcast. Well, hey, I mean, we get to talk about things we love, and hopefully people find a lot of things in common here, and it's always super fun, yeah. So it's a great idea that we've got going here, and I'm really hoping that we have some fun chats.
So I think for the few people there who perhaps would not know who you are, Abhijeet, do you want to quickly just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am a Mumbai-based comic artist and illustrator. I publish my own comic series as well. One of my more popular comics is the Angry Maushi comic series, and I also draw for leading children's publications, and I'm an animator at core. So yeah, that's about what I do. But more interestingly, I'm also a comics collector. I love collecting comics and action figures, and I'm really, really proud of that collection. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. Krishna, why don't you, tell us about your background and your love for comics and pop culture?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely need an introduction. I'm the co-founder of a children's storytelling company called Katha Kids, where I write and edit a lot of the stories and that's where I work with you, right? Very closely in illustrating some of our stories and of course designing our books. So yeah, so that's a little about me.
No, it was fun. It's always fun, working on Katha Kid stories, and they just take me back in time, to my childhood days, my early exposure to comics, and all those folk tales that we cover, and I get to draw. Take me back in time. So Katha Kids is super fun, and I must say that one of my earliest fascinations with comics was, of course, there was the Asterix, there was Tintin, there was Superman and Batman, but I used to love the way Indian comics used to show our folk tales and our traditional stories, whatever are popular in India, in a comic format, in a cartoon format. So Tinkle, Amar Chitra Katha, these were fodder. I mean, these are titles I've grown up with, and so today I'm really happy to be drawing for them, and of course Katha Kids with Mr. Subba Rao, being in touch with what he has written, and of course being in touch with him directly through you guys, it's been a complete honor. So it's super fun, and this entire domain is fun to even not just talk about, but even consume as a reader and as an avid fan.
Okay, so my father is Subba Rao, the Subba Rao that Abhijeet just mentioned. He is the former associate editor of Amar Chitra Katha and one of the founders of Tinkle. We used to have a lot of Amar Chitra Kathas and Tinkles lying around.
Right.
And in fact, me like my elder brother and I used to fight so much on Tinkle that my mom had developed a system that I think even numbers I would read first, and odd number comics you would read first.
So you all had a head start on the odd even numbering before any other government in India had it going on odd even numbers.
I think my
Nice,
mom has
nice.
to take credit for that.
Yeah, yeah. The Rao family has it going first.
So
Superb,
absolutely,
yeah.
Abhijeet,
This is amazing.
I completely take your point. I mean, Amachitra Katha and Tinkle is how a lot of us were first introduced to comics. And you're right. Again, Tintin, Asterix is something again that was part of my comics diet. You know, in those years, I'm talking about. I think the late 80s and 90s.
Right.
But I think slowly what happened is, although I was interested in comics, slowly things like, I lost touch. I think largely because India decided to uh, open up its economy, and with it
Yeah.
came cable television to our home.
Oh yeah, the good old cable debut days. Yeah, yeah, I remember those. You were the cool kid in class if you had cable TV first, before everyone else had.
Absolutely, and I remember the day my parents got the cable connection. It was during
Hmm.
summer vacations,
Huh.
and it was with the condition that they will cut the cable after the vacations are over, so
Right.
that during the school year you don't have cable at home. That never worked, by
Distractions.
the way.
That I almost thought y'all had an odd even thing going there, like the odd channels you would watch. Even Siddharth would even channels.
uh, no, thankfully no, not there. Nothing, no system there. But I remember my father sitting us down and very sternly telling us that, listen, it's very easy to get lost in this thing. I wonder what we are going to tell our children, or what you are going to tell Advik when he grows up.
Yeah. Yeah, for the listeners, we have a almost a 5 month old. I mean, he's going to turn 5 months very soon, and already there are talks like, okay, he's going to be reading all your comics that you have stashed so carefully in mint condition. I said, no, I'm going to like inculcate the whole collector's principles in him. You gotta hold them. You got to hold them in a way that the spine doesn't get open. You got to hold them in a way that there are no fingerprints on it. So no, I guess he'll be having his own comics first. But I agree with that point that with cable TV and a whole lot of other distractions that came in. But for people like me, comics retained that bit of importance because maybe since I am into illustration, I was always interested in the visual part of storytelling. So I kept myself a little up to date. I mean, again, if you remember the 90s, I mean, I'm an 80s born guy. 90s and early 2000s, getting comics was a task because you
Yeah,
never used to find like dedicated comic book sections or whatever. There used to be shops. We used to, and I was lucky enough to know a few shops where I knew exactly where they used to keep those comics singles, and that too, the DC
yeah,
Marvel singles, which are today, I mean, many of them are collectibles that I have. Apart from that, graphic novels as a thing came in much later. So for me, it was very. I used to enjoy collecting comics from Raddiwalas or from bookshops wherever I could find. And I was the guy. So in school, the first and second rank kids used to get like this voucher, a bookshop voucher,
okay,
and after annual day पे मिलता था, and after annual day the next day we used to have a book exhibition in our school. So whoever that bookseller was had a great thing going.
acha.
Voucher एक 20 रुपए का 30 रुपए का, we are talking 90s here. And of course, he used to display all his books in the big art room, and I
Okay,
was the guy who always used to go towards the comics. So I remember picking up like Archie or um, an Asterix where my mom had to pay the extra 20-30 rupees upar se
okay,
because that voucher never, and it was pretty expensive. Asterix back then was, I think, 40-50 bucks, and this we are talking about early 90s.
hmm.
50 bucks was expensive actually when you're looking at things from
Yep.
that perspective. But I used to buy these. I mean, I used to pester my parents into buying me these, and they did. So I was very, even if there was cable, which I totally was glued onto for the animated shows, I used to do my reading. So in that sense, I think I'm happy that my collection kept growing. Both the tinkles as well, and then I started drawing for tinkle, which means I had access to more tinkles. And in that sense, I'm a proud collector. But you're right. I mean, with TV came a problem where people started reading less and consuming television more.
Yeah.
But that's a trend I would really want to keep a check on. And if Advik asks me about these choices, I'll definitely say a book is a better choice first up. TV can always wait.
Yeah, I think Abhijeet, what happens is that then you have to prioritize. So for instance, I did not give up on reading, but then okay, I started reading initially. I started reading Famous Five, and then
Hmm.
the Three Investigators, if I'm not mistaken. There was some series called that, like that.
Okay.
Then I started reading novels and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
slowly lost touch with comics. Of course, whenever we used to take train journeys, we would get Chacha
Yeah.
Chaudhry's from the
Yes.
railway car stall.
Yeah.
But then, beyond the point, whatever we were gifted of Asterix and Tintin, and I loved Asterix and Tintin, but
Yeah.
never sort of developed the collection. And then
Right.
again, it is a question of priority, right? Okay, if your Chacha Mama has given you $50 or $100,
Yeah.
somehow you save that from your parents before they grab it.
Yeah.
And then you have to decide, how to spend it.
Yeah. No.
So,
And I have a confession here. You've read the other children's books and novels and all. I have a confession. I never really got into that kind of reading.
okay.
So my reading, and I used to feel a little shy, telling people about this. When people used to talk about Enid Blyton's or the Nancy Drews and all these children's books, growing up. I used to tell them, okay, I haven't read many of these, but I can talk about Mad, I can talk about Asterix, and I can talk about Tinkle comics. But that was my reading pattern. But at least in that way, reading was there. I mean, I won't deny that I did read, but not the books. And
Hmm.
which is why, when people bring those subjects up now, hey, have you read this book? I'll be like, I've not read many books, but I've
Hmm.
read many comics.
Hmm.
So if that counts, that is my score.
Okay. And you're right. I mean, at one point of time, if you said that, okay, I only read Mad, or I only
Yeah.
read comics, Batman's of the world and
Hmm.
all that,
Hmm.
it, well, okay, you fine, but
Hmm.
you would not be given a cool status, definitely,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Back in the
Yeah.
90s, even the early 2000s,
Very
it was
true.
not
Very
cool
true.
to read these things.
Because they used to feel that this is like time pass, and the real stuff is the other books you read. But that's where I think the wrong notions used to set in, and it's only after the Western comics really gave us the adult content and mature readers
Hmm.
tags, did people start realizing that, okay, it's not just. And that's the unfortunate thing. People think comics is only for children and only for holidays and only for,
Hmm.
but it's not. It's a legit form of literature.
Hmm.
It's got a whole lot of things going in it, and it's now that people realize how powerful a medium it is. So yeah, I mean, that is basically why I used to feel shy telling people ki, Arey, you know what, I've not read those children's books you're talking about,
Yeah.
because I had a fear of being like judged. Arey, ye padhta nahi hai. This guy only reads comics. But today I proudly show it off. Comics was my forte in reading.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, things have changed. Perceptions have changed.
So if anyone is interested, there is this amazing book which I am reading right now, and I think as we go ahead in this series, I think we might be quoting more and more from this book. It's a book called Understanding Comics by
Yes,
Scott McCloud, and
absolutely.
Scott has done such an amazing job of breaking down, especially in the first few pages, of breaking down, what exactly comic is and why comic is a distinct form of storytelling. It's as distinct as film is
Hmm.
distinct from a book. It's an amazing read. I mean, if any of you want to pick it up, it's a great sort of way to understand what goes into developing
That's right.
comics.
That's right. And he's put it down in a comic format. So,
Yeah,
people can, it's easy to get a little intimidated sometimes, thinking about, oh, here's a book about comics, so I guess it's a very technical thing. But no, he's actually put it down in a comic format itself. So it's a very reader friendly way of taking you through the genre of comics and the little nitty-gritties that go into making a good one.
hmm.
So yeah, that's a good recommendation.
Okay, so we fast forward to 2008, and that's when Iron Man comes out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is the first film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
That's right.
Uh, and I think this changed things, isn't it, for comics?
Actually, if you look at it that way, the main game changer. I mean, we did have the Christopher Reeve Superman
Yeah,
right from the late 70s. We had Tim Burton's Batman, but apparently, these weren't taken as. I mean, they didn't know how to take the franchises further. They probably were released like more like one or two offs. Not more than
exactly.
that.
Hmm.
Maybe like three movies. But it's the 2000s which changed it with X-Men releasing in the year 2000.
Okay.
Of course, not part of MCU, but we
Hmm.
are just talking about how superhero comics became, a money spinner, and they realized that this can be franchise worth, because then you had X2, X3 following up so fast, and of course, Hugh Jackman was a name everyone
Hmm.
suddenly started remembering and taking, and that led to more movies being made. At least people weren't delving too much into the superhero domain before that, but then started the entire comic book movies trend, and MCU, like you said rightly, took off because of the success of Iron Man in 2008, and that's what a lot of fans, a lot of comic nerds like me, we discuss ki, if that movie had not worked,
Hmm.
we probably wouldn't have got the rest of the MCU, and what has happened after that, all the cultural phenomena
Yeah.
would not have happened. So it was largely, yes, due to the success of Iron Man, which led to everything that we know today in the MCU.
Yeah. You're absolutely right about X-Men. I loved X-Men when
Yeah.
I watched it. At the same time, and I'm perhaps talking just about India here, that X-Men was still watched primarily by, the geeks, right?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
So maybe it touched, those, even those people who resided in on the borders of geekland. But the reason why I
Yeah.
mention Iron Man is because that was the first time that the mainstream sort of started
Oh,
getting
absolutely.
hooked to it,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. It reached out to a lot more people. I think it largely also has to do with the casting of Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, yeah.
His persona, his personality added so much to the character. And you should remember that Iron Man was never like Marvel's top grade superheroes.
Hmm.
They had already sold the rights to other, production houses, other studios. So Marvel decided that they're going to go with like probably their tier two heroes, and Iron Man. Probably no one would have expected much out of it when it was announced,
Yeah.
because we had already seen like movies like Daredevil come and go. We knew how. I mean, wasn't really anything great. Elektra came up, Punisher. There were several Punisher movies, but something about Robert Downey Jr. I think worked here, and that really slick, that slick pace with which that story was told. Very simple. It didn't have too many complications there. I think that was a winner, and
Hmm.
and again, the post-credit scene culture,
Yeah.
connecting movies and making a universe. See, it all started there, and
Yeah,
people were
yeah.
like, okay, this is something interesting.
And I agree with everything that you've mentioned. I would like to add one point there, is the humor. For the
Right,
first
sure.
time, a superhero action film had humor. People had also toyed with the idea of showing the dark side of superheroes and the doubts
Yep.
of superheroes. But
Yep.
somehow the humor that they brought was
Yep.
what I think, broadened that appeal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
I
and
agree.
as MCU films have released, you see that humor element adding up, and especially with Guardians of the Galaxy and
Yeah.
Thor Ragnarok. I mean, it was. I mean, there were laugh out loud moments, right? I mean, in these
Seriously, yeah.
films.
Correct.
Yeah.
In fact, Ragnarok was so unlike a Thor movie because we had the other two Thor films, which I really did not rate too high. But this one was like completely. It was more like a satire, a spoof of the entire genre.
Hmm.
And Jeff Goldblum in the middle of it all. I mean, everything there was so different. But you're right. I think that little dose of humor was required, and MCU makes it happen in a good way.
Yeah.
All their movies have a good feel to them. Most of them, at least. I mean, I,
Hmm.
I must say, I'm predominantly a DC fan. But when I'm watching,
I was going to make a point here. Okay, okay, go ahead.
yeah, no, so I'm predominantly a DC guy, but when I watch Marvel films, I know, okay, here's the major difference, and this is why I probably am enjoying this movie. But yeah, I mean, to 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 their credit, they I know exactly what you're going to say now. So let's
Say it,
just hear it
say
out.
it, say it, say it, Abhijeet.
This is a sensitive territory for me.
I'm going to land you in trouble. People don't know
No.
me, so they won't say anything. Let me say that
Well,
again. DC films suck.
I'm laughing, but I'm crying inside. Um, no, I know exactly where these movies go wrong. When I'm watching most of the DC films, I know exactly why they're getting the hate that they get. But I do feel that the characters they have a lot more going for them.
Hmm.
But I think it was a question of playing catch up with MCU,
Hmm.
which led them to those hurried, universe building ideas, which was not required. DC, I think, has a stronger point when it comes to standalone movies.
Hmm.
Like Shazam, for example.
Hmm.
Although it
Okay.
loosely connects with the entire of DCEU,
Hmm.
but because there's Superman teased in it. I think it stands on its own, which is what makes that movie so special. I loved Shazam. It's exactly like what a superhero movie should be.
Hmm.
Aspirations, ambition, whatever you want to say.
Hmm.
And but of course, you have movies like Suicide Squad, which
Hmm.
again, I enjoyed it as a movie when I was watching it. In fact, I found a few sequences hilarious, but I know where it falls flat. Okay, so I'm not like one of those fanboys who be like, no, how can you say that? I know exactly why Suicide Squad failed, but it did make money and won an Oscar as well.
Ah.
So it was a villain. It was a villain. It was absolutely hilarious watching. I
Yeah.
think it was Cara Delevingne who
Hmm.
was playing the Enchantress. What was that? It was a breakdancing uh, thing. I don't know what the role she played. It was bizarre.
Hmm.
I love the characters, but
Hmm.
it just goes into a very cliched trope, and that is where I feel people started hating it. But again, it won an Oscar, so I'm not saying much. I was happy when it did. But yeah, and then again, the recent Birds of Prey, it
Hmm.
was nice, but that's about it. There's nothing in that movie that I would really go back and rewatch. Same with Wonder Woman 84.
Right.
It was a nice movie to watch, but that's it. There is
Hmm.
nothing that you would really remember it for and say that, oh man, that moment was so amazing. If you love Gal Gadot, if you love the Wonder Woman franchise, that movie is for you.
Hmm.
But there's nothing in it that you would take home and say, wow, what a movie.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
unfortunately, there are some things there which don't work out. But I would point out, say, several MCU movies also which kind
Yeah.
of didn't work,
Yeah.
even though they had the right things going. There were several which did not work, including the Thor ones I mentioned,
Yeah.
including even Captain Marvel. I mean,
Hmm.
I wasn't, I mean, that movie was just there as a connector. I loved the soundtracks they've used in it, because I think all the songs that they've used as a soundtrack behind are probably right out of my iPod, or my
Yeah.
playlist. But apart from that, there was nothing special about that film.
Yeah. And
And
I think,
so
I think the presence of people like Phil Coulson, the presence of Nick Fury,
mhm.
just the very fact that they appear in the film,
Yeah,
it pulls it through.
yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's where the MCU sort of helps out. I mean, according to me, Iron Man 2 is terrible,
Oh yeah,
right?
even three. What the
Even
hell was
3.
three?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same. Not too impressed with Thor, the first film Thor. Not
Hmm.
impressed with the second film of Thor,
Dark World,
Ragnarok.
Dark World.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Dark World. Dark World. And I think, of course, Ragnarok redeemed it. But my favorite films from the MCU is Guardians of the Galaxy, without a doubt.
Right. What a refreshing movie that was.
Hmm.
And for those listeners who probably hadn't heard of Guardians of the Galaxy before the movie came out, don't worry, you're not the only ones. Probably 99.9% people had not heard of this comic series Guardians of the Galaxy. And I read somewhere that Marvel literally reached out for the bottom of their barrel to pick out franchise, a title to make a movie about. And how well did they do that, right? Fantastic. And I enjoyed that movie. The casting was perfect. Chris Pratt, as Star Lord, everything went off very well. Even Guardians of the Galaxy 2, although it was, I mean, I found it to be a little bit of a drag, still it was a fun watch. But again, if you come back to Ant-Man, the first
Yeah.
one was nice. The second one was
Hmm.
again a forgettable one. I mean,
Yeah.
I would not have any great memories of that film.
So I think this is what Marvel and DC does, Abhijeet. They just pull us off track. I think the point I wanted to make was that, with the introduction of the MCU and the subsequent sort of the DCEU that came
Yeah,
out, I think what that did was it made comics mainstream, and
yeah,
it
that's right.
generally made geeky things mainstream. Television series like Big Bang Theory helped a lot
Yeah, yeah,
in mainstreaming of geek culture.
that's
So,
right.
which is why then Star Wars became mainstream, Star
That's
Trek
right.
became mainstream, and yes, there is a difference between the two.
Yeah, you guys, you better know this. You cannot confuse the two. There are people who are going to be hurt if they come to know that people mix both of them up. Star Trek is different. Star Wars is different, and
Yeah,
with different geekdoms on their own.
yeah, absolutely. And what I felt was that there was this kind of stratification uh, of of geekdom, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So there are the absolute hardcore geeks
Hmm.
who are collectors of comics. They know a lot about comics. They know a lot about story arcs and the nuance of the various superheroes and the arcs that they were part of.
Right.
And these are the guys who are going to fight very passionately for or against
Yeah.
DC for all the comments that Abhijeet has made. Uh,
Yeah, I really hope the comments start coming. We'll come to know.
but there were a whole bunch of other people who are
Hmm.
now part of geekdom, whether
Yeah.
we like it or not. And yes, and there are the people who, you know, okay, they just see the Iron Man films or the Avengers films, and then go back to watching Salman Khan movies, like So that's
The
not
ultimate
who.
superhero.
No, but there are there but there's a large chunk of people who now want to start experimenting more. They want to dig deeper.
Right.
And and I think it's a very difficult thing for these people because they are not
Mhm.
ingrained in the culture. I count myself among this tribe,
Okay.
and I like to believe that we are big in number. And I think that's where the idea of this podcast started. So I wanted to now get into comics,
Mm-hmm.
and the internet apps make it so much easier now to access comics. But the
Right.
problem is that the internet is like this gigantic waterfall, right? And there's so much that you can access. And I think that becomes a problem. Too much choice is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know so so
Yeah.
so all those supervillains, they're not wrong, you know
Yeah.
when they say freedom is not good for you.
I agree. I
Okay, no.
agree I agree. A lot of villains have their hearts in the right places, just the way they go about things.
Absolutely, right. That's why I reached out to Abhijeet, and I said, man, can you recommend things that I can pick up, that I can read? Because remember, comics are still expensive. Okay, I may have a bit more money in my wallet today than when I was a 10, 12-year-old kid, but it is still expensive. And
That's right.
I reached out to Abhijeet primarily to ask him, okay, Abhijeet, tell me what would you recommend? And that's what this podcast is all about, right? It's not for the absolute super geeks out there, people who are
Right.
extremely knowledgeable about comics, but it is more for those who are sort of, who are dipping their toes into this
Hmm.
into this world. And hopefully, you know Abhijeet guides us, as we go about trying to explore comics.
That'll be fun. In fact, I must say that it's very difficult, even for the hardcore geeks and nerds, to keep track with whatever's happening. I must say that I'm definitely not on the top notch level of geekdom, because I know so many people, I meet at comic cons, or people I know directly, who follow story arcs like you mentioned. They'll name the story arcs, they'll
Hmm.
name what happened where, etc., etc. But what I can what I usually do is just keep a track, look around what's happening on the whole pop culture scene, what's happening on the comics to movie adaptation scene. And one one such title which caught my attention, I think it was last year when the TV show streamed on Netflix first. I think it was 19 or 2019, I think. Yes,
Hmm.
2019 was Umbrella Academy.
Hmm.
Umbrella Academy, so when you brought this up, I was like, Umbrella Academy is a fun, it's a fun way to start reading a comic from the start, maybe without needing much of a background,
Hmm.
because it's a fresh concept. It's not something that has existed for the last 75 years and you don't know where to start from. Because, frankly, even if I was to jump into a Batman series right now, I would be lost, because there are so many titles, there are so many reboots that have happened, there are so many rethinkings that have happened, multiverses, all these things. But here's Umbrella Academy, a fresh new concept,
Hmm.
which again, got popular largely, with the non-comic readers,
Hmm.
because of the TV show.
Hmm.
And then, of course, there were a lot of converts from there who went and actually read the comic again. I was one of them. In fact, I had not read the comics before the TV series, but it's when I heard about the TV series, I actually started reading it. Found the concept to be very interesting. The TV series did not do total justice to what the comic series was like, but I loved the second season.
Hmm.
And I think the comic series, coming back to the way it's created, the way it is, it's extremely different. The
Hmm.
art style, especially, I love it. Every bit of it. So that was my first recommendation for you to go with. Did you get a chance to check it out?
Yes, I did. So I'm going to give a little backstory as to
Yeah.
why Abhijeet recommended Umbrella Academy to me. Again, I like being clever, and I was thinking, what do we do with episode 1? So we decided not to record episode 1. And this, Abhijeet, as you know, is episode 2 of this podcast.
Yes. Yes.
And the title of this episode is why episode 2 is episode 1. Oh no, is it the other way around? Why episode 1 is episode 2?
Now we are sounding like Star Wars newbies who are like, wait, which was that episode again?
Yes. So episode 2 is episode 1 in this podcast. And the reason is this. The reason is that if in Abhijeet or my lifetime, time travel is invented, then Abhijeet or Abhijeet and I are not going to go back into the past to hang out with Genghis Khan. We are not going to go into the future. But what we are going to do is we are going to come back to 2021 and we are going to record episode 1 of this podcast. So if you see episode 1 in this list of podcasts, you know that time travel has been invented.
Yes, keep a watch for that. In fact, Krishna, we would let go a chance to make some serious money if we decide not to go back in the past. Because if we just go back in the past and pick up Superman Action Comics issue number 1 and preserve it in mint condition, travel back in time to the current present, we would probably make like $3.5 million. That's the price it fetches apparently.
Amazing. But
I think the podcast idea is better.
Yes. First we'll record episode 1 and then we'll do all that stuff.
Sounds like a plan. Watch out, guys.
So when obviously when I have clever ideas, the first thing I do is I like to share them with people, and then I told Abhijeet this, and I think that's where he immediately recommended Umbrella Academy because time travel plays such a big role. Yep. So there are 3 arcs in all. The first arc is called Apocalypse Suite. The second one is Dallas. And the third arc, which released very recently, I think that was in 2018 or 19, that is called Hotel Oblivion.
Yeah. And
they are planning a 4th story arc to be released sometime soon, which is Sparrow Academy.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. No spoilers for the TV show there, but viewers who've seen the show would connect with this.
I have not seen both seasons so far.
Okay.
So yes, so we are going to try and stay away from spoilers as much as possible.
No spoilers. Yeah, no spoilers.
So I started reading Apocalypse Suite, and I liked it so much. I ended up reading Dallas as well, and I think these 2 arcs play a big part in season 1's storyline. Am I right, Abhijeet?
That's right.
They've combined these 2 arcs in.
Yeah, they've kind of made them both, kind of like mixed them both together, and have taken some good parts out of them and transferred it onto the streaming, screen.
Yeah, Abhijeet, your point is so well taken. That the good thing about Umbrella Academy is that you can get into it without the burden of so much of the past, like 50-60 year past. You don't have to carry that burden.
Correct. One can just pick it up and enjoy the books and kind of get a nice self-contained universe and storyline. So it doesn't make you want to like, oh man, I gotta read like 10,000 more issues before I make sense of this particular episode. So it's I like that, fresh start, pretty self-contained. That's easier now.
Right. And in fact, Gerard Way, who is the writer of Umbrella Academy, he mentions this in an interview that he did with Rolling Stone, because Gerard Way, like Abhijeet Keeney here, is also a musician.
Yes, thank you for plugging that in. So, guys, I am a guitarist. Yeah, I had a band. Krishna and I were speaking about that, and he decided to plug that in. I had a band, and we used to do a lot of live gigs, and there was a bit of the rock star life going way, way, way back. But yeah, so thank you, Krishna, for doing that.
So Gerard Way was the lead vocalist for My Chemical Romance
Yeah.
before he got into writing for comics. I'm going to quote what he says. In comics, I didn't see anything like the Umbrella Academy. I saw a lot of things that were beholden to continuity that had been going on for 50 years and stories that have continued that long. But I didn't see anything that threw the reader in the deep end and just got them into the good stuff right away.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, and so clearly Gerard Way was frustrated by this, like, the the so many story arcs, the so many reboots, that you need to know if you were to pick
Correct.
up a comic today.
Correct.
And
And that's exactly what any new reader would face. Like there's so much to catch up on. It's very difficult to it's like watching a TV series and you're suddenly being recommended a TV series and you find out that there's already 20 seasons of it. Where do you start from? Where do you start catching up on it from? And that's something similar which has happened with this comic series. I mean, not this comic series, generally comic series. This one starts afresh, and which is why I think Gerard Way, keeping things in mind, has come up with Umbrella Academy for us.
so, just to provide a little bit of a background, the story is really about seven kids who are born suddenly one day, and
Yeah,
and the women who give birth to them were not pregnant. They suddenly gave birth to them one day, and all of them were born at the same moment,
right.
right? And so there are not seven kids. I think there are many more kids than this, right, Abhijit?
Correct.
And
There are
I
many
think
more
only seven
kids.
survive.
I think that goes into spoiler territory if I'm not mistaken later on.
Okay.
But these seven are taken in by one of our main characters, and that's where the academy starts.
So the guy Abhijit was talking about is Sir Reginald Hargreaves,
Yes, that's
and
the one.
he's
That's
this
the one.
eccentric billionaire, and he adopts these seven kids, and all seven have superpowers,
Yeah.
and in so many ways, Abhijit, the fact that he adopts these seven kids and
Hmm.
brings them into the Umbrella Academy, it reminds me so much of X-Men.
Totally. In fact, after the X-Men, whenever there was a group of superheroes who are under a particular person and they run some sort of a college or academy or a family, it's always the same formula that we think it's going to go in for. Like the X-Men, Professor Xavier having a college for the gifted, and
Hmm.
then they are actually superheroes, and he's like the father figure. But how different is this?
Again, Gerard Way mentions in that same interview with Rolling Stone that X-Men was the first comic that he read.
No
So,
wonder.
so perhaps that makes sense why he
Yeah,
went for this kind of a plot.
correct.
But like Abhijit hinted, there's a big twist because Sir Reginald Hargreaves is a sociopath,
Yeah,
right?
complete.
And so what would happen to the X-Men if Professor Xavier was not this kind, understanding man? I think
Yeah,
that's what we see play out in the Umbrella Academy.
totally. It's that entire setting. It is that emotional bond or the lack thereof, which makes the relationship not just between him and the children, but even among each other. All the seven of them. Very, very intriguing read. The chemistry they share, the kind of the way they support or hate each other. That's what I think is at the core of it all.
Again, sorry, I'm going back to that Gerard Way's interview, because that gives us a little bit of an insight into why he developed this series the way he did. So he says that a band is like a dysfunctional family, and I think he's brought a lot of that into the Umbrella
Yeah.
Academy, right?
Yeah. Also, I feel that today's times, whichever family based or group based franchise you see, it'll always be shown as dysfunctional. I think it's
Hmm.
become a trope now.
Hmm.
Of course, he must have done it in his own thought process, but I've seen that pattern being followed, across multiple franchises.
Hmm.
There cannot be a peaceful coexistence. There will always be clashes, there will always be conflicts, and I think that kind of reflects how we are as people anyway, right? I mean,
Hmm.
gone are the days when we used to find like superhero movies or comedies or TV shows where they show a family, it's all hunky dory.
Yeah.
Here's a group of cops, or here's a group of crime fighters who work together, it's all hunky dory. It doesn't happen that way.
Hmm.
There will be clashes, there will be a clash of ideologies, and I think so Umbrella Academy takes that trope again,
Hmm.
but again, it doesn't come across as tried, tested and repeated or anything. It's just a thing on its own.
Abhijeet, what I found very difficult initially, when you are sort of thrust in this sort of new world, like,
Yeah,
it always takes a little time to warm up to the characters, to get to know the characters. And
that's
I
right.
think, and I think one of the things that makes Umbrella Academy so different is that
Hmm.
these guys don't have distinct costumes.
So they actually look like they are in some high school, and they're students from that high school who incidentally fight crime. They have like these eye masks, and later on when they grow up as well, it's a very normal, I mean, it's not, I won't call it normal, but not a superhero type of a look that they have.
And I did not realize the importance of superhero costumes till I read Umbrella Academy. And and
Oh, it's
I can sort of understand, perhaps this was one of the reasons why those guys gave them such distinct costumes, because if you want to differentiate the characters in some way, right? And what happens with novels is, you can dedicate perhaps 2 pages to describing how a person looks and what his fashion sense is
yeah,
like and things like that.
that's right.
And comics don't have that luxury, right? You need to
Correct,
establish them
correct,
in one frame.
correct.
And and I think it was fairly bold of Gabriel Ba, who's the
Yeah, yeah,
who is
illustrator.
the illustrator, to go with such a formula, and I but yes, having said all that, I found it very confusing in the beginning, because
Yeah,
I couldn't differentiate between the characters.
yeah. Reminds me of the good old Ninja Turtle days where all four of them used to wear red masks. They did not
Hmm.
have any differentiating colors. It was only thanks to their weapons that people could make out, okay, this is Leonardo, this is Donatello. So I think uh, it's natural to be confused, especially in a comic like Umbrella Academy where they all look alike. Maybe that was the idea. Maybe he wanted to show that each
Oh.
one of them is supposed. It's just like having a commando unit. They all
Hmm.
wear the same garb. They'll probably just disguise themselves. They all look the same. Maybe they were trying to get at it,
Hmm.
like a covert operation thing. Even kids in school uniforms, they all look alike. At one glance they're all looking alike. I think that was the idea behind it, personally speaking, the way I see it. And maybe people were to get confused till they read the dialogues and see them talking to each other.
Hmm.
So maybe it's like an outsider perspective where someone who doesn't know who they are watching them, and they all feel like, okay, here are 7 kids running around trying to save the world. So that's where I think that's a take on, like you said, the importance of costumes
Hmm.
and how not to show it the
Hmm.
way it is traditionally shown was something that they tried out here, I feel.
My experience was that it kind of forced me to look more closely at the visuals,
Yeah,
because
yeah, that's right.
normally when you read comics, you tend to go from
Hmm.
dialogue to dialogue, and the pictures are kind of somewhere at the back of your mind, and
That's
you
right.
basically want to move through the story quickly. And I think
Hmm.
what this did was it made me look at the characters very closely to see, okay,
Right.
uh, uh, you know okay, this is seance, or
Yeah.
this is rumor, and
Yeah.
things like that. I think Space Boy is the only character who looks very different because he has this bulky frame.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, number five.
Yeah.
Uh,
Number five, when they grow up, and number five is still the same.
yeah. So I think, but apart from those two, it's difficult in the beginning to do that.
Yeah. It's
And
only when they have their battle. I mean, when they are in battle and the way they fight and the way they talk to each other is when you come to know who they are referring to and who it is who's talking. Which again reminds me of how people probably used to read the Turtles comics back then.
hmm,
No differentiation. Four turtles wearing red
hmm.
bandanas and different weapons. So you needed to keep an eye open who's wielding which weapon. Acha. So then he becomes Leo, he becomes Raph. So I think it's a thing. I mean, getting more getting people to look at other aspects more than what the actual character is at one glance.
Hmm. Sort
Oh,
of.
and incidentally,
Hmm.
I got to plug this in. Gabriel Ba and his brother
Hmm.
Fabio Moon, I think is his name.
Fabio Moon, yes, yes.
Yeah. They both had come to the Delhi Comic Con in 2014. They were the international guests there,
Oh,
and what happened was, unfortunately, I could not really interact with them much because I had a session with David Lloyd, V for Vendetta. He was another guest on the same show, so I couldn't interact much with these brothers.
okay.
But if I had my Umbrella Academy issue with me back then, and I would definitely have got it signed. I would definitely have got a little custom sketch also made. But too bad I wasn't into that comic series then. I just viewed
Ah,
the fact that I just got into it way later, like pretty much recently. So he's come to India. He's come to Delhi Comic Con.
that would have been a good experience. But you were spending time with someone who's also a legend.
Yeah. David Lloyd is a legend. He's, in fact, when he came to the Mumbai Comic Con, we had a chance to show him around the city. Took him around South Bombay, took him around the suburbs, showing him some nice places, and
Hmm.
had a good day out with him, out and about town. I mean, we couldn't believe it, right? Here's the guy who drew V for Vendetta. He's the guy who made the Guy Fawkes mask what it is today.
Ah,
Here with us. So
okay.
yeah.
So V for Vendetta is one of the comics I think which Abhijeet has set out for me. I think that
Yeah.
will come up in one of our upcoming episodes.
Yes.
We will dig into it more there.
Yes. There's a
Yeah.
lot to talk about in that comic as well.
Hmm. And in Umbrella Academy, another thing again, Abhijit, perhaps you can expand on this a bit. So the first couple of issues in the series, they have this very desaturated kind of artwork with
Mm-hmm.
very perhaps low in details
Right.
compared to what came later, like
Right.
then it was richer in colors and things like. I mean,
Right.
what's that about? I mean, is this really about perhaps they were experimenting there in the first couple of things, and then they sort of characters, you were mentioning Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
so artwork has this tendency of sort of maturing, growing, settling somewhere
Yes.
as you go.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Any artist or any comic series also that you follow, you always compare the first one to the latest one. You will always find a change in the appearance, the colors, the strokes. Everything changes over time. So I think it is about the artist also getting used to drawing those characters, learning more about them, and of course, change in color can also denote time or the theme or the
Hmm.
tone. Sometimes they use it to show the locations as well, like you might have noticed in Hollywood films.
Hmm.
Whenever it's India or any of the Asian the Indian subcontinent countries, they'll suddenly add a tinge of yellow to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
you know so many a times color plays an important role in establishing time, setting, theme, location. But for Umbrella Academy, I think it was, I don't know. I got a feeling that they were going for some sort of minimalism there.
Hmm.
But as the series went on, they went in a little more detailed, a little more with denser colors, richer
Hmm.
colors. And I think it probably is a question of the art style and the look changing over time.
Hmm.
Classic example again, you pick up the first ever Asterix comic, Asterix the
Yeah.
Gaul, and compare that with probably Uderzo's later works, where the character has changed tremendously.
Hmm.
That goes to show how art changes over time, how an
Hmm.
artist changes his or her artworks over time. So I think that's the case here with Umbrella Academy as well.
Amazingly, there are so many panels where Gabriel Ba has simply not shown eyes, nose, or a mouth for someone who comes from reading ACK and Tinkle. And then,
Right,
of
right,
course, when you grow up a bit, Asterix and Tintin,
right.
this is a bit of a shock. I mean, even if like I have picked up the odd Batman and Superman, there are certain things that are always there. I mean eyes, nose, mouth, these are all very conventional things that you expect. and
Correct.
and this really stood out for me in the Umbrella Academy, that there are frames where the
Yeah.
artist is simply not bothered to put these elements in.
Features, yeah, yeah. In fact, this is not a this is a thing that a lot of artists do. Maybe I feel that it's done to show some sort of if it's a quick cut, in a movie, sometimes you kind of miss the details when you're
Hmm.
watching it if it's a quick edit. So maybe that scene is supposed to be a quick one to just pass, and they kind of get that illusion going by showing only the silhouettes or only just the body outlines,
Hmm.
without showing the facial features. So maybe I feel it has a little bit of a cinematic thing going there,
Okay.
where they feel that the attention should not be absolutely on what the expression is, but rather the silhouette, because cinematically, if it was being shown, it probably would have been a very fast cut
Hmm.
where establishing is not required. It's just a matter of showing who's there on the scene,
Hmm.
if you know
Hmm.
what I mean. And again, these are artistic calls sometimes they take. I would not have a very clear explanation to it, except for the fact that I feel that cinematically it works as a quick cut, and which is why
Okay.
it looks like what it is.
I think what happens is that it takes you a little time to get into the comics. I think I
Yeah.
was hooked by the end of issue 2. I was hooked into the storyline.
Right.
It's a very weird world to be part of. And the fact that the artwork is so edgy, I think I
Yeah.
think I think it takes a little while. But then of course
Correct.
what happens is that issue 3 onwards, the you were mentioning the colors become richer. And I think
Correct.
I think that sort of, and you are now invested in the characters as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that plays a role
That's right. That's
in
right.
sort of, and so I think that's an important kind of lesson I felt to take away from this, that
Mm-hmm.
if you are starting a new sort of comic, and this could well be a Marvel or a DC comic,
Sure.
uh,
Sure.
it takes time, to get into things. Read a couple of issues, 2 or 3 issues, before making up your mind whether
Right.
this is working for you or not.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because many
yeah.
many times the story picks up later, so
Hmm.
you might lose out on a good story because you didn't like the first issue you stop reading. You might miss out on a lot of good stuff later on, so you always must give it a little time.
Yeah, what I like about the fact that there is a Netflix series as well on the Umbrella
Yeah.
Academy is
Yeah.
that both Gerard Way and Gabriel Ba have had an opportunity to flesh out their
Yeah.
characters. It's not always a luxury you have in comics, right? Because
Well,
the economics of comics perhaps sometimes restricts you, especially in those initial issues when you
yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah.
know whether it's going to become popular or not.
Correct, but I'm not sure when. I mean, if they had an opportunity to expand on this, because I don't know the timeline of the comic and the TV series and how soon was the rights picked up. But I do know that the forthcoming comic series would definitely be based on a little bit of the TV continuity as well,
Hmm.
because the TV continuity is a little different than what the comics are like, where
Yeah.
they have edited, chopped, cut, used something from here, something from there.
Hmm.
So in a way, you're right. I mean, today's times, it's all a game of licensing and adaptations. So any comic creator who's going for new content would eventually want to see that on the big screen, or
Hmm.
probably even the small screen. So I think nowadays people write the characters in such ways that they are easily adaptable as well.
Hmm.
So I think you're right in that sense. They probably have that at the back of their mind, especially when they're coming up with the next installment for the comic series.
Is that something, Abhijit, that you would do as well? I mean, I know India is a very kind of a nascent market for these things, but
Adaptations, right?
when you are creating new characters, let's say after Angry Moshi or whatever
Right.
new characters you're creating, do you have this somewhere at the back of your mind?
Uh, Now I do. Now I do. Earlier, probably I did not. And there were a couple of conversations we've had with production houses. I won't name them here,
Hmm.
who are interested in picking up rights for converting them for any screen, big or small.
Hmm.
Of course, those talks did not go forward very successfully because of a lot of other reasons.
Hmm.
But that is when I realized, okay, there is an opportunity here, there is a chance here. So it can also be an animated show, if not a live action one, and that'll also be something that I would love to see converted so that it reaches out to more people.
Yeah.
So yes, I will be keeping all these in mind when I'm probably creating my next IP,
Okay.
because I
And
think it just makes sense in today's times.
I think what happens is that, again, when it's being created um, for the book medium, the economies come into the picture, right? And
Oh
uh,
yeah.
we have these restrictions on how many number of pages do you want to tell the story in, and that plays some amount of role in the way the story is told. And I think that's what they're able to do with this television series, where the budgets are much bigger. They are
Yeah,
able to flesh out the characters much more.
correct.
uh,
Because as compared to a 2 hour movie, here you have almost like a 10 hour run of a story,
yeah.
ample time to flesh things out.
And another thing I was so happy to sort of see is, and this is something I think Gabriel Ba acknowledges it in one of his interviews, is that they brought diversity into the cast,
Right.
whereas that is not very apparent in the comics, because again these comics were written in 2007 2008,
Correct, correct,
when George Floyd hadn't happened.
correct, correct,
um,
correct, correct.
the Black Lives Matter movement hadn't happened. So so I think and I really like what they've done with the characters. So
Hmm.
they have brought in diversity, and the way they have fleshed out certain aspects of the relationship as well.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
so now I have to ask you, of the seven, who's your favorite character?
Oh, it's number five. And if you watch the TV series,
Ah,
they've really done justice to it,
yeah,
to that character.
yeah.
So, and it was largely from there that I actually came back to the comic. I went the other way around here,
Hmm.
and I absolutely love that character. Apart from that, Space Boy, he is extremely relatable because, again, insecurities, there are issues he faces, there's trauma, everything. I mean, this is something that everyone goes through, and the point of these comics is to make it relatable with people.
Hmm.
But my pick, no matter what it is number five. How about you?
So when I read the comics, I had a different view. I liked like you, I like number five. Also because he plays such a important role
Yeah,
in the plot.
yeah,
And I don't think so. We are giving away a spoiler by saying that number five is the guy with time traveling superpower.
yeah. No, no
Yeah,
spoilers there
no spoilers
because
there.
yeah, it
Uh,
starts off. I mean, the comic starts off with those mentions.
yeah, and when I saw the TV series, which I've not finished watching, oh my god, number five, the casting, that kid's acting, it is
Yeah.
so good, right? But but there was another character when I saw the TV series, I liked another character more. and that is Seance. Seance? Seance?
Klaus. Seance, I guess. Yeah,
Seance.
yeah.
I
Klaus.
think his superhero name is Seance, and
The TV series has really fleshed him out really well, I feel.
hmm,
And season two, man, just get to season two. You will. I was glued on to it. I mean, much more than season one.
huh,
Season two, and watch out for that one fight that happens. I'm not spoiling anything here. That happens in a what do you call it? A passageway
okay,
of a building
okay,
with number five and a couple other characters. I think
hmm,
Diego is there,
hmm,
and it's played to the soundtrack of Kiss.
okay.
I was made for loving you, baby. Oh my god, the fight is just amazing, and the dialogues. I used to just kind of go back to that scene and just watch it because of how awesome that scene was.
Okay, okay. No, but so I loved Klaus. I love,
Yeah.
the way he acts, the drug addict sort of
Yes.
vibe
Yes.
that he has.
Yes.
And incidentally, from what I've heard, Iron Man is supposed to be this kind of a character. Not okay, not as hardcore into
Hmm.
drugs or anything as with Klaus, but
Yeah.
he's supposed to be a drunkard and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that, right? And which is not
Correct.
how
Correct.
they've shown him in the MCU.
They've
They've
just
shown
touched upon that. Just touched upon that a bit. But in the comics, he's had some real hard times with alcoholism. Iron
hmm,
Man.
hmm. And I think this is something that they don't do in the comics, but in the television series they've explained why Klaus is like that. In season one, there is a scene
Correct.
which
Correct. Correct.
again,
Correct.
it is all thanks to Sir Reginald Hargreaves,
Yes. Yes.
psychopath.
Yes. All comes back to him. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I really liked him. I love Diego,
Yeah.
and I'm not a fan of Space Boy. I mean, I know he has his problems, and and this is the reason why I don't like Captain America as well. Okay, I'll not go as far as to say that.
Oops.
Okay, no, so okay, no, okay. Let me sort of qualify that a bit. I like Captain America. He's not my favorite character in the Avengers,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and part of the reason is because he's Mr. Goody Two Shoes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Doesn't
it.
put a wrong step forward ever,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I think that's the problem with Space Boy as well for me.
Yeah.
I see him as this guy who's trying to do the right thing all the time,
Hmm.
and I like Diego as a sort of a counterweight to him.
Then you have to watch that fight in season two.
Okay,
Yeah.
must binge now.
Yes.
Let's
Season
let's
two
forget about
is
our day jobs.
no. That is worth it, man. Do it.
So yeah, so I think I find myself in this very strange position where I kind of know what's going to happen. Like, so in terms of spoilers, like, yeah, I know I have an inkling where season one is going to go, but I'm eager. I'm eager to see what they do.
Okay.
How they're fleshing things out. I'm fairly sure the
Okay.
plot points are going to remain the same, but it's
Mm-hmm.
that journey in between those plot points is what is going to change.
Sure. Sure.
And I know you're controlling yourself in in not spoiling things for me.
I'm not
Oh, but
saying much.
you know what, Abhijeet, we forgot two more characters who are amazing: Hazel and Chacha.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes. 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 Those are cool characters. I love what they've done with them.
And in the comics, they don't show their face. They have their masks on all the time, and I
Correct.
loved it.
Correct.
It is so
Correct.
weird.
They cast Mary J. Blige here. They better show her face. So the character of the handler was also, at least in the TV series that I used to really look forward to, because the entire appearance of that character was so weirdly intimidating. It was just something that I think, viewers would love to keep a track of. Who is she and what is she up to? What is the entire point behind what she does, etc., etc. So, I mean, as we have discussed, there's so many characters in the series catch your attention, which makes it that much fun, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's always someone you can go back to and say, hey, you know what, that journey was interesting, that characterization, that characters, character building was interesting.
Hmm.
So that's the fun part of Umbrella Academy for me. I mean, sure, there is X-Men, there is the other comics that we have with teams of superheroes, but nothing as much as, I mean, like how Umbrella Academy goes about its story writing, at least for me.
Yeah, like I said, it's a very kind of an interesting experience for me to read the comics, while season 1 and season 2 are already out, and I've not
Yeah.
yet finished seeing the season, and it's fun. Like I've never had this experience,
Right.
wherein something is ongoing as I'm reading the titles.
Right,
So
right.
for anyone listening, do check out the Umbrella Academy, the comic series. We mean, like I mentioned, there are 3 story arcs that are out there. The first one is okay.
I was waiting.
Okay, the first one is Apocalypse Suite. The second one is Dallas, and these 2 arcs are related. I have not read the third story arc,
Yeah,
but
neither have I
from
actually.
what I understand, Hotel Oblivion does not continue from, like, the villain is different. Let me just put it this way: the mission is different, the villains are
Hmm.
different.
Hmm.
So I'm sure there's going to be some spillover in terms of the story, but yeah, the first 2 story arcs are related. It's a fun experience to watch it. Well, like what Abhijeet mentioned, it's not difficult at all to get into the story. But yes, but stick with the first 2 issues, and I'm pretty sure you'll pretty much be hooked. Like I just ran through, from issue 3 onwards, I just ran through all the issues till the end of Dallas.
Yeah, that's what happens. It's a fantastic series, and I think for anyone who's interested in picking up a new title, start afresh, I think that's a good one to start off with. I mean, I would prefer people looking at not just the superhero aspect of these books. Any superhero comic y'all
Hmm.
read, there's always a human element to it. There's always an underlying message somewhere or the other. I won't say it's all moral driven,
Hmm.
but the whole idea with superhero genre today is making it relatable to readers. So
Hmm.
you'll always find something or the other that might click with you, and that's what my idea of when I read a superhero comic or read or watch a superhero movie, I just look out for those angles. What are they trying to get at? What are they trying to explain here? Because gone are the days when superheroes were supposed to be like flawless and could do everything right. Just like you mentioned, Captain America never puts a wrong foot forward.
Hmm.
But those characters cannot exist in today's world.
Yeah.
So how have they changed? How has story writing changed for superheroes? That's an important aspect there. So a book like Umbrella Academy explores so much within itself. It kind of spoofs a lot of things from superhero genres from before, I feel, indirectly.
Hmm.
And which is what makes it such a good read.
Yeah, I completely agree, and in a very different way, in an absolutely different way, I would consider the boys in this category.
Yeah.
Although the 2 are different. I mean, boys takes a very, I mean, it has a very different take
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
yeah.
superhero genre. Whereas what I like here is, first of all, the weirdness. Like
Yeah.
they have brought weirdness into the superhero genre, and I know this
Correct.
is a weird thing to say, because superhero films are weird to begin with, right? I mean, these
That's
are
right.
not natural powers that people have. But having said that, if you go through Umbrella Academy, you are going to see how much weirder things can get,
Yeah. That's right. Including the powers. There's some
including
very
the
strange
powers.
powers. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we are not going too much. I think Abhijit and I are both skirting around the storyline, because
Yes.
we don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
But I think the only thing we mentioned is number 5.
Time travel.
Time travel is his superpower. But again, there is a twist there, even on that.
We are not going to get into
We
that.
are not going to get into that. And yes, time travel plays a big role in the plot.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think that was perfect, Abhijeet, for our episode 2,
Episode 2.
episode 1.
Remember, guys. Remember, guys. If there is ever an episode 1, time travel is legit. So the challenge is out there.
And we've recorded, and by the time you listen to episode 1, I think Abhijeet and I would have gone our ways, perhaps into the past or into the future.
With our respective copies of Action Comics #1.
Yes. And I want to add one point, Abhijeet. I didn't want to interrupt you when you were talking about teaching Advik, the rules of handling comics. I think rule number 1 should be do not pee on it.
Never ever. Oh yeah. That's something I'm gonna like keep it far away.
We'll
Thank
see,
God for diapers.
We'll see how much Abhijeet succeeds in all of this futile attempt.
I am keeping my fingers crossed on this. Thank God for diapers.
Diapers are the new superpower.